Hey guys, I'm Latoya Walker,
I'm Lonnie Walker.
and this is Way of the Walkers.
We'll build this together, any type of weather. Unity is key. Keeping first God. We will conquer the world. Baby, just you and me. I can vision us now. One big happy family.
What's up, y'all?
What's up? Hey, I'm Latoya Walker,
I'm Lonnie Walker.
and this is Way of the Walkers.
How y'all doing? We doing good. So, babe, let's get into it. Let's get into it right now.
How y'all doing? We doing
What
good.
in the world
Why in the
made
world are
us
we doing
decide
this?
to do a
Why are we
podcast?
doing this?
What are we talking about?
Listen, I don't know because I am an introverted person. I'm usually the behind the scenes kind of girl. I really push you. I'm like, babe, you can do it.
we behind the scenes right now.
You do it, and I'll just support you in any way. But it's been several years now that we've had people who ask us about our marriage all the time. They ask us if we've written a book. They ask us tips. They call us about if they're struggling in their marriage. And we truly believe that God has anointed our marriage to be an example. So it was probably 2-3 weeks ago that we were at a meeting, and Lonnie is really good about checking in on people. Actually, the way that we met is because he checked in on somebody, and she was like, I want you to meet somebody, my friend.
Yeah.
So that's how we met. So he's always been that dude he's going to call you and check up on you. And so he does that with a lot of the men in his circle. And they truly appreciate, especially Black men, where in that community, that's not always something that's done. To just check up on you, not asking you for anything, just genuinely saying, hey, dude, how are you doing? How's your family doing? So we're at a meeting, and one of the men that Lonnie checks up on mentioned how, in front of everybody, a room full of other dudes, how special it is and how much he appreciated Lonnie's commitment to check up on him. And he just kept going on and on. He kind of veered off the topic of the meeting,
Right.
and just kept going on and on about his wisdom, Lonnie's wisdom, and our marriage. And in that moment, I thought, you know what, Lord, let's do something. I'm open to it. I just feel like this is the season to do it. So that is what got me to think of, let's do a podcast, even though I get so nervous. But
So, I know that my wife have a wealth of wisdom. She doesn't call people like I do because, she just introvert and she don't really like being on the phone, really.
true.
But in person, she's touched a lot of people with different things that she said, how she can help them navigate certain situations. Her whole life, she's done that. So I do it different than her, but basically we're doing the same thing that's different. For me, I like checking on my guys, not wanting anything because it's more of a genuine reach out. It's
Yeah.
not when I call you, see my number, you're like, oh my gosh. You
Here
had
you
those
go
people who
again.
call you
Yeah.
and they want to borrow some money or they want to borrow the truck or what do they need or they need you for this. I want to really check on people just to check on them. That way you're building that real relationship.
Right.
So they know that if they need me, they can reach out. And I know if I need them, I can reach out. And what I try to do is speak from my experiences. So when you say I'm wise because of what I've been through. So if I don't have expertise in that, I won't speak to them like it's wisdom. So it's certain situations I've never been in before. Just an example, I don't have another mother of my children that we're sharing custody.
Right,
I can't
right,
speak to that
right,
dynamic.
right.
So I wouldn't be like, "Oh man, I think you should." No, I'm speaking to, okay, hey, that happened. You know what? This is what happened when that happened to me, and this is how I did it. This worked well, this didn't. Now, your situation isn't exactly my situation.
Right.
So that don't mean I'm telling you to do what I did. I'm telling you what I did to resolve it. Because I tell people all the time, your wife isn't Latoya, and you're not me.
That's right. That's
And
right.
it's important because there's different dynamics. You know, as people grow up, they have different things that trigger them from childhood
Absolutely.
hurt or
Absolutely.
young adult hurts. So it may be something you do for me that won't be triggering to me and I'm able to receive it. But if you do that, that's a trigger for them. So you have to kind of navigate where that person is when you're trying to work through something. And then you try to make sure you're giving them suggestions, not telling them what to do.
Exactly.
Because at the end, I always say, like, listen, you can do whatever you want. I don't want you to do what I said because you have to suffer the consequences if it doesn't work how you want it to work.
Yeah.
And so we kind of been in this space and been doing it, and it kind of, this thing just kind of just launched out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been doing this for a while, like you said. And I didn't even think about that, how long um, I have been doing it. Because you're like, she's been doing this for a long time. And
Yeah.
it's true. Because early on in our marriage, Lonnie wasn't that guy. He was a guy that you could call, like he'd check up on you, you go play dominoes or football, basketball, or whatever. But you weren't really the guy who had the wealth of wisdom that he has now because he was struggling in his own self, and he's grown so much now, so
Yeah.
much.
I can say I didn't have a solid foundation physically and also spiritually. So those are two separate things because you need to be able to discern what, when I'm responding to this, am I responding this in a spiritual way or a physical way? Is this a physical issue or if it's a spiritual? And if you mismanage those, you can be misguided in how you respond to something.
Right.
And then me learning who I am through my brokenness,
Right.
that took time
That was definitely a journey for sure.
because when we met at 20, when I was 20, my swag would have told you that I thought I was all of that.
Yeah.
And I was very confident and I was very assured of myself. But inside, I was an 11-year-old hurt child.
Yes.
And so that meant, even though you're talking to a 20-year-old, when you said certain things to offend me, my behavior was as of an 11-year-old.
Absolutely.
And then you like, thought I was dealing with an adult while you acting like an 11-year-old. And so as you
Wow.
navigate those things, yikes, it can be trying, especially for the other person.
Well, for me, I saw the 11-year-olds.
I
I
know.
was not.
I just said it.
No, no. I think he said something like, "I thought I was talking to an adult, but here's 11-year-old responding." But I really did. One of the things that I think was our saving grace in our marriage was God really showing me your brokenness and also learning who you were and your traumas. Because in doing that, I was able to not be so offended and not take things so personally when you would lash out, when you would have certain situations that went on, or when you would reject me. I was able to think about, as painful as it was, able to compartmentalize that and put it over here and say, okay, he loves me, he loves me, he loves me. I have to reassure myself he loves me. And realize you're reacting to a trigger.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be something that would be like I'm fussing at you, yelling at you, because I'm not a nagger. I'm like, listen, I'm gonna talk about, and then if it don't work out, I'm gonna go to God, and I'll be like, that's your child, deal with him. So it wouldn't be anything aggressive or like us in an argument. It could be just a comment that could set you off.
I I was a walking offended person,
Yeah, absolutely.
essentially.
That's a good. That's a good.
Basically, the best way to say it is waiting for offense to get you in order. You offended me, I'm
Yeah,
about to offend you. So now that we're talking about that, let's get into like who we are so they can know who we are. So I'm Lonnie Walker.
that's my baby.
I was born in the real D, Detroit, Michigan. What up, though? I was raised essentially by my grandmother the first 10 years of my life in Detroit, in the hood of Detroit. That's sugar sandwiches, sugar water, balled up piece of bread. We were, what we called it back then was Focus Hope cheese. That's that government good grilled cheese.
Okay,
We had
that
food
was the
stamps.
best.
That's that money that looked like pesos, but it was from the government. And so grandma, every on the 1st and 15th, she'd give you $1 and say, go in there and buy a nickel piece of candy and bring me the 95 cent back so we can pay these bills. And then I moved to Texas when I was 10. I turned 11 that summer. And that's because my mom was here and she was engaged to get married. So I've been here since I was 11 years old. I went to Eisenhower High School, Big Ike. And then from there, I graduated. I went to Sam Houston State University. And then I graduated from there. And then I started working. And then after I worked for 20 years
On the road.
at State Farm out in them streets,
Yeah.
I got another job at a company called Star. And they got me off the road. And once I got off the road, we were praying for me to get off the road. I was on the road for 20 years. So the first,
Tell them what on the road looked like.
okay, so that meant 9 months out of the year, I was in another state in a hotel living.
Right.
So this is the routine. So a storm would hit, let's say it hit Florida. I would drive to Florida and then I would be there for 30 days, come home for 4, go back for 30, essentially until it was done. And depending on how bad the storm, that depended on how long I was going to be there.
Right.
So we had been praying to get me off the road because essentially since we were dating at college, I was on the road. And then I was on the road working. Finally got off the road. And then once got off the road and our prayer was answered, I told the Lord that I was going to go ahead and I was going to go all in. And then a couple years later, the entrepreneur stuff started. We got into master classes and then the thing just exploded. So that's kind of like my version. So what's your version?
My version of me. Thank you, baby. So Toya Walker here. I have 4 siblings, so there are 5 of us. I was born in Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi. When I was 5, I moved here to Houston. My grandmother raised me up until then, and then I came here to Houston, and it was really traumatic because my mom recently told me that when she saw me, she did not recognize me at all. And when I saw her, I didn't know who she was. So coming into an environment of feeling just lost, afraid, unsure of my surroundings because it was a new environment, a new state, new people. I'm sure I had met the man that she was with that eventually became my stepdad before that. But if I didn't know her, I surely didn't know him. And he was the one who brought me here to Houston. It was just I could just remember. I actually don't really remember my childhood because there was so much trauma involved. But I remember the absolute fear that I had. I was always constantly in fear of everything because I didn't have a strong foundation. My mom and her boyfriend at the time, who became my stepdad, they were really toxic with each other. Um, I didn't really know my brother because we had been separated for so long, and coming and navigating those different things was really hard for a little girl. But thankfully, when I turned 7, my mom used to live in a lower income apartments, and they would send a bus around to collect all the kids that wanted to go to church because their parents couldn't take them to church because they were working on a Sunday. So my mom would put my brother and me on the bus, and we go to the church. And I remember one particular Sunday, 7 years old, the preacher was talking about Jesus and how he wants to be your friend. And because I was so starved for connection and just security and love, I was like, I want to be a friend with Jesus. I want to be my friend. And so I walked up the aisle all by myself and I gave my life to Jesus. And it just, from that moment on, I had a true relationship with him. And it helped sustain me through all the different aspects of my life that it was really difficult. And it's funny because his life and my life, they parallel each other. When we got together, we started talking about what we'd been through and we grew up, and it's like, whoa, we have a lot of the same stories. They're very similar. And I think that bonded us, but it also kind of was crazy because we both had so much trauma. We both had a lot of trauma. We talk about how bad our childhoods were, how trauma-filled they were. And he will say to me, but how can you still have joy? How can you still have peace? How can you forgive so quickly? How can you show up like this when we both had terrible things that went on? And sometimes he's like, and you had it worse than me. So what is this? But it was because of God. It was because I had that relationship at 7. And when I needed him the most, when I was that little girl who just was going through a lot, I leaned on him. And that's what I always did. And I would just believe that it would be okay. It was going to be okay. No matter what it was, it's going to be okay. So that's how I'm able to turn around and be like, ah. And that's part of why we wanted to start this podcast, because the things that we both suffered through, we actually have stories. We have things that we that we've gone through, and the aspects of how we got over it and how we overcame. And the thing that I lean on and understand and pray about is that I suffer well, because God promises that we will suffer. And I say, Lord, I just want to suffer well. So that's my thing. So when I'm suffering and going through things, I don't say, oh my gosh, what was me? I'm like, all right, Lord, help me suffer this well.
I don't suffer well. I suffer good. Suffering well, that means good. Well is better than good. So, and it's just interesting that you brought that up, because I mean, we talked about this, of course, but you was like, how did you feel leaving your grandmother after you living with her 10 years, getting on a flight coming to Texas? And I was like, I don't remember. I remember being told I was leaving, and then I remember pulling up to a house. And then I done pulled up to a house to a woman I don't know, which is my mom, a man that I don't know, which is some man that she's gonna who she gonna marry, and now I'm in a whole nother state. So when you're in Detroit, if you're from Detroit, you know they have like rats, rodents, and things of that nature. That's normal size. When you get to Texas, When you in Detroit, you got roaches, and they're this little. Like yeah, they're like this
Listen,
little.
everything is
When
big
you
in
get to
Texas.
Texas, my first encounter was not getting acquainted with my
Oh my
mom and her
gosh.
husband to be. I met one of them big fat juicy
Not
roaches.
juicy.
Yes, you know those the ones that when you step on them they go pop.
Babe.
And then if you on carpet, if you don't do the spin move on
Oh
them, they
my
not gonna die. They
gosh.
gonna pop. They gonna play possum. They gonna be still. And as soon as you get your foot up, they gonna break out running. So I have trauma. I'm still working through that trauma,
Obviously.
and especially when they fly down, they be parachuting down. Yikes! So just being in a different environment and there's different things that like we know both of us know in our childhood is gaps, and we don't know what happened
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
because the trauma, and then
Right.
trying to get to the bottom of that because we're trying to have a healthy relationships ourselves, something that wasn't demonstrated in us every day. We didn't
Right.
see that.
Yeah.
Um, and so trying to navigate the proper ways of, yeah, just because you didn't get that growing up, that doesn't mean that's wasn't supposed to be here.
And it's not an excuse either, because a lot of times people use that. Well, I didn't have a father, and it's like, yeah, but.
But this is a perfect example. So one of the things I saw growing up was I saw men beating on the women. I saw that.
That
And
they're
that
in a relationship with.
right, they're in a relationship with. And I said, I would never do that.
Yeah.
And me being able to do that, I saw it. I did not see that, but I knew I didn't want to do that. It's certain things, but that's just a maturity and you growing yourself up to understand that just because you saw something and it appeared to be right or it worked out in that person's favor, at least on paper, you think
Or
it did.
it was natural in that
Right.
environment.
That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that's something that you need to carry on. Because there's a whole bunch of things that I saw growing up. I knew I wasn't gonna ever do drugs. I saw that smoking and drinking. I knew I wasn't gonna do any of that. But it's funny how some of the other things
Exactly.
that you
I was going
saw,
to say that.
some of the other things that you saw
You
that
picked that right on up.
that wasn't good, you're like, yeah, that might not be the best, but I'm gonna grab that one.
Dabble
Right,
in that
I'm gonna do
though.
that.
Right.
So
So they're and that's true. We have to actively have the ability to not fall into those traps that we saw, the negative things that we saw. Because a lot of times that stuff is in us because our parents did it.
Mm-hmm.
It's in our DNA. It's something that we learned because we saw, and we have to be wise enough to know, but that's not what we should do. Just because that's what they did, and means what we should do. And it's work. It's work to do that. Yeah,
So, I mean, we're going to get into marriage situations,
absolutely.
how to manage that, and how in some situations it's not the time to speak on it.
Oh my gosh.
We're going to talk about, just being silent in some moments because it's not the time. I know a lot of people talk about, well, listen, this happened and I want to talk about it now. But
You gotta know your audience.
if you understand that person isn't in the posture to receive, or if they still on the fence, it may not be the time to speak about it. I know that men get a bad rap, I would say, for being cold and not speaking. I think one of the things that if you don't think that what you're going to say is going to help that conversation in that moment, you just need to let that person know, like, look, this happened. I know you want to talk about it right now, but right now I'm processing. The hourglass is running and I need to filter through how I'm going to communicate this to you, because what you don't want to do is talk about it and then you end up speaking reckless things, because then it goes from what you were talking about to know, like, wait, you said that. And then now you're not only talking about what you're talking about, now you're talking about another
you
thing
just
that was
said.
just spoke out.
Right.
And if you didn't speak that, if you spoke that out of anger, you may not necessarily meant that in your heart, but you were just trying to get that person back.
Yeah.
And it's just things that we went through This wife of mine, yeesh, she put in a lot of time, her patience with me, because, and we're gonna get into it, the childhood and the things that I was carrying, the different perspectives of women that I saw in my life,
Right,
and
right,
so I just bunched everyone up, all women in one little category based
right,
on the women who exuded bad behavior around me growing up. And then I'm bringing that to a marriage.
right,
And that's not who she is. And it's not fair because she didn't do the things that were done to me by them.
right.
And you carrying that because you got your wall up and you're like, I don't want that to happen to me again. So we're going to get into all of that.
Yeah. Something that you mentioned is about knowing when to be still and to be quiet. That is a practice that I feel like I developed when I was younger. As I talked about, we didn't go to church, and even after I was saved, I really didn't tell anybody that I accepted Jesus. I mean, I was 7, I didn't know I'd have to go say I accepted Jesus or whatever, but um, I just leaned into being still with him and being quiet with him. And even though there was chaos swirling around me, I can find that stillness in him. And so that was a discipline that I developed throughout my childhood, young adulthood. And when we went into marriage, God knew what he was doing. Baby, God knew what he was doing because that was the saving grace of our marriage, I think, was for me, was learning how to eat it. Basically, that's what I'd be like, okay. There were
Did
so
y'all see her
many.
face when she
I
said eat it? She said
listen.
eat it.
Ugh. So
Yeah.
there were so many instances where there would be something that was done that was very hurtful towards me. And I would pray about it and I would be like, okay, the Lord is telling me not to release it. Because had I gone to him and talked to him about it, it would have made it worse and I would have left even more hurt. So I would sit in it and pray about it. I wouldn't even talk about it. I would just like take it and slap on the face and be like, still your spine, still your spine. You can handle it. Let's just do it
To
because I knew that God was working on him and I believed that it was going to be okay. Like I said, it's going to be okay. So it wasn't easy all the time, but it was definitely a discipline I developed. And as we grew in our marriage, God was maturing him step by step. He was maturing him. And then he would release me to talk to him about certain aspects. Even still, there were situations where it didn't go well at all, and I would leave more hurt than when I approached it. But every time it was like it was a level of maturity. Like I was calling them to step up and to come on. Like we got to come on. Um, but it was many years. It was many years, and I think we watched.
that
This,
was a whole bunch of minis.
it's true, child.
It was a
But
few. It was a
it
few,
was
few, few.
few
That's
few
how.
few 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 few, and we love watching. We probably do a podcast where we just talk about the shows that we love to watch. But anyway, we love watching our relationship shows, and a lot of these shows, one of them is Married at First Sight. They are talking about, oh, I can't do this because he does that, and I can't do this because she does that, and we're like, man, this is nothing. This is marriage. And if you're going to be married, you need to be a thug. Like, you got to thug out marriage. And I think people miss that. I think people missed what marriage is. It's bringing two crazy individuals together and trying to work out their traumas.
So
It's going to be kind of dicey.
what you have to understand is when you're dating, it's easy. And the reason it's easy, not that dating people is
Sometimes.
no, not that dating people is easy and you don't run in bumps there.
Right.
But when you're dating, most of the
There's
time
there's
you can
there's
hit
an
the eject
eject button.
button. Like
Right.
you could be like, well, we're dating. Well, tomorrow we broke up.
It doesn't have that same gravity and
Correct.
emotional pull because it is an opportunity to be
Well,
like, okay, I'm out.
I was gonna say you're not commingling a lot of stuff. I know people live
Oh,
together before
absolutely.
marriage,
Yeah.
but when you first start dating, you're not living together. You're
Yeah.
living separately. You're not interacting, and then you're controlling the narrative outside. Then once you decide to move in and you get married, it's a whole nother thing because you're. It's almost when you're dating, you're seeing the best of that person,
Absolutely.
and then at some point,
They're representative.
right, at some point, that is going to break down, and you're going to get to the real person who they are. I just remember the story.
Wait, I
Do
have a
you remember the
question.
story?
No, I have a question.
Oh, I was like, you're in my head.
Were you? You didn't show up as a representative, right? Was that
Ew,
was
yikes.
was that the good version of you?
It was the best version that I could put forward at that time.
Oof.
Listen,
Okay.
it was enough to keep you, got you.
No, because I knew what God put me to do.
That's right, God knew.
God knew.
Yes.
So go ahead. What were you saying?
So I'm just saying that you're putting your best foot forward, but at some time, that act it's gonna be
gonna
it's gonna be a
wane.
wrap. It's a
It's
wrap.
gonna wane.
And then after it's a wrap,
Yeah.
now we're dealing with the real you. So
Yeah.
it was cute at first that, oh, you threw your socks at me. Now it's why these socks in the floor.
Right.
Can you pick this up?
These socks
You
up,
grown.
sir.
And so it's just a different dynamic. And so, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna discuss the things that we've been
Absolutely.
through. We're gonna talk about entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
which my wife, I mean, she's been an entrepreneur for years before I got involved.
Yeah. It runs in my blood.
She has Miss Hazel's tea cakes that I think she's been doing that about 10 years. And I wasn't doing anything. I was just helping her do that. And then she told me about a couple avenues. She's like, babe, you do this. Why don't you get into project managing and construction? And I think I told her at first, I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Everything I say, it's like, I don't want to do that.
It's more work. I don't want to get into that. And so eventually I was like, well, let me try. And then a couple things happened, and then boom,
Yeah.
that launched.
Yeah.
And then when we got involved in master classes, which we're gonna go into that and the significance of that, and how people are giving you knowledge that you don't have, and changing the way that you seeing things.
Absolutely.
You'll be amazed at how your vision having you see things that are not there, or obstacles that you are placing on yourself that
Right.
actually are not there. You putting things in your own way. And so when we got released into that, then we went into more entrepreneurship. And so now we're like some serial entrepreneurs. We probably got like 5 or 6 LLCs that we have active.
Yeah.
And that's all thanks to her, because I didn't have that. But what I wasn't understanding was that we needed to do that because typically, unless you got like a real good job, you're not going to build generational wealth
Right.
at your W-2.
Right.
And so that kind of led us into that. And then we're going to get into the
The
different
marketplace.
aspects of how we use our ministry in the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we know that we're called to marketplace ministry, and we are to show up,
Yeah, a prophet told us one time that we were called to. I can't remember. You remember?
be distributors of wealth.
There you go.
Okay.
Go ahead and say it again.
Distributors of wealth.
To be distributors of wealth. So we want to do that. We, in our marriage, we feel like we want to pursue our purpose. First of all, is to glorify God through our example. And then to run after the things that God have purposed in us, like to really run after it together and to help each other navigate this world and that whatever the purpose that God placed in us, and to fulfill our full potential in Christ. So
to be clear, so we know that our mandate, it isn't just for us to go make a whole bunch of money for ourselves.
right.
Our mandate is that we want to help people build generational wealth for their family. So part of our mandate is to make people around us wealthy so their generation will be wealthy. And so it's an honor that he told us that, because we
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
But now that we know that, we're definitely intentional on how we're going to help and fulfill that purpose.
Yeah.
And then with that, we're navigating having 3 children.
That's right. We have 3 beautiful babies.
They're not babies. They eating a
They're
lot of
my babies
groceries.
forever.
But no, we love them. We love them. Yeah,
We love
them.
them.
They cool. They cool. And so how we're navigating that time and space and making sure that we're pouring into them like we need to be pouring into them, and also managing the businesses, managing the W-2 job, and then making
Yeah.
sure that we are spending the quality time that we need to spend with each other. One of the things we date regularly.
Yes.
It's significant. It's significant that you date each other. So for me, and she'll correct me on spot. Yeesh.
But you see how mature you've gotten that I can say, babe, this, and you'll be like, yeah. Before I would say this, and you'd be like,
Why I gotta say that?
Right.
Why I gotta do it like that? Why can't it be like how I want it to be?
You don't ever say. So, yes,
Yeah.
he's grown so much. Look at my baby.
I'm going right now, y'all. But intentional, and what a date for me is me and her only.
Right.
I understand that you got a couple friends that you can go out with and you can do things, but it's important that we spend the individual time with each other. So it's us. So with us, it should be a safe place. Date
Yeah.
night, we make sure we keeping it light. We're talking about the kids, and we're talking about the businesses and stuff. But this isn't the time that we're really talking about heavy stuff. We're just trying to talk, have a good time.
Talk about our dreams and our goals and
Right.
things like that.
Yeah, so we're talking and everything's good. And then, well, you know what grown people do
I
after
knew he was
date
gonna
night.
say that.
I'm just gonna leave it at that. So you setting that mood, the ambiance,
Listen.
and then if y'all feeling like some dessert, then let's get our dessert on.
Oh, my
If you
gosh.
feeling it, if you ain't
Listen,
feeling it, then you ain't.
Listen. It's
So,
good.
The kids, we got basically almost all 3 of them are adults.
Yeah.
We got one that he's 1 year short of being 18.
Yeah, he's just turning 17, so don't move him that far.
Yeah.
That fast.
And so we're going to get into that, and then we're just going to share, our experiences, the things that we've been through,
Yeah.
and hopefully that can help you.
The things that we're still going through and
Right.
how we're navigating those things. And yeah, hopefully it will. I mean, we just want to come in here and share ourselves with you. And we pray that that is what God wants us to do. Because I told Lonnie, I was like, let's just try this and see if this is going to be blessed. And then if it's not, we can be done. Because that's how we are. We're like, listen, if it ain't working, we cut it quick. And it's okay. So,
No, I think it'll be fine. It's just, priorities,
mm-hmm.
and our marriage is one of the greatest priorities that we have.
Absolutely.
And so we're not going to let anything, entrepreneurship, any of that stuff come in between that. And it's about having that priority. We're going to get into how we serve each other in the marriage.
Yes. Yes.
We'll get a little bit into how
We'll tell you our mission statement for our marriage, because we have a mission statement for our marriage.
We'll show
Our marriage crest. We have a marriage crest too.
Okay.
He's
Wait,
like,
hold on. I'm about to
else?
say 3 words. We
She's
good?
gonna
So,
say something else.
so no, we're just gonna get into like who we are, and hopefully, like I said, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Like we open books. We love each other. I mean, we've been at this
How long
28 years.
Oof, yeah.
Yeah. So
Been together that long.
been
married
together.
23.
We married 23. So we got experience.
We got some stuff on our tool belts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We probably get into how we've helped people, telling different stories of situations without mentioning names because we want to keep people safe.
Yeah.
To talk about childhood, our brothers, sibling relationships. I have two
Yeah.
brothers.
Yeah.
They're adults. One of them's married, one's not. We're gonna just get into who we are, and hopefully it's very helpful for y'all.
Yeah. So
So,
that's our first episode, guys. We hope that you tune in. We hope we bring value to your life, and this is the Way of the Walkers.
all right, have a nice day.
We'll build this together. Any type of weather. Unity is key. Keeping first G-O-D. We will conquer the world. Baby, just you and me. I can vision us now. One big happy family.